of Trinidad and Tobago. The man, come at the moment, come at the man. Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Because what don't kill you should make you stronger. So my problems is like steroids, boy. I get my doses from all kinds of sources, and all of them still can't kill me now. You see, at them sink me under ice, so ride out the storm, them just like a boat. So as the box me down, so I get up. They have to wonder how others get up, and every crack I see, I just see through. And by the help of God, others get through. I just won't stop. I feel like
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Member of Parliament for St. Joseph and our Minister of Health. My recognition of the Minister of Finance, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, Minister of Finance Colin Imbert, my friend and colleague from Laventille West, the one and only Fitzgerald Hines, and my former seatmate in the Parliament, now Chairman of the Southern Laventille Corporation, our one and only Mr. Anthony Roberts, local government specialist. Our party officers led out in the audience here this evening by the Venerable Mrs. Joan Yule Williams. My other cabinet colleagues, led by the Member of Parliament for Aruka Maloney, Mrs. Camille Robinson-Regis, our Lady Vice Chairman, other cabinet members, other party officers, chairmen and members of corporations, and a special recognition to our stalwart. It's such a pleasure having you here this evening. And I see a lot of young people wilting in the heat in the room, but I'm sure, look at how fresh she's looking, Mrs. Small. 92 and running. It is such a good feeling to be in a PNM meeting and have a 92-year-old in the front row, and to have, is that your granddaughter? Her granddaughter coming forward for public service in the PNM. The PNM is the only political party in Trinidad and Tobago that has this legacy, and we are so proud of your family. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is the night for us to talk to you and the people of Trinidad and Tobago in general, because there's a time for work and there's a time to talk. A lot of talking has been taking place in this country for the last two and a half years, because all that they didn't do before should have been done in the last 2 years. Everything that was wrong with the country should have been fixed in the last 2 years. And everything that they want to do, we're supposed to have a vision to do it in this 2-year period. That's how it has gone on. We took notice of that, but we kept focus on what you elected us to do, which is to treat with the circumstances of Trinidad and Tobago and to give the people of Trinidad and Tobago a pathway out of any difficulty to the prosperity that resides in our national anthem, boundless faith in our destiny. And we have taken our destiny in our own hands, regardless of good times or bad times, in good health or ill health. We are the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we are responsible for whatever becomes of this God-given nation. That is the assignment you gave us. So for the last 2.5 years, I have led a team of people who you elected, and tonight you heard from the Minister of Finance. We are making progress, and we are on our way to some element of prosperity in the future ahead of us. The work has to be done. It is good news to hear that the numbers are better. They're going in the right direction. But that is not a license to let loose the gimme gang, that I want this and I want that and I want more this and I want more that. What we are doing is closing the gap between our revenue and our expenditure. And as the gap sees more revenue, it becomes smaller between revenue and expenditure. And that is what gives us the pathway to prosperity. The life that we are living now, as difficult as it is, as difficult as it may be for some people, and many people in this country are still going through difficult circumstances. But as difficult as it is, remember, we are still borrowing to maintain some semblance of the life that we have today. So there's no splurge to come as you hear more increase in revenue. It is simply that we are moving first to reduce the amount of money we are borrowing to fund our arrangements. Now, when we say we're borrowing to fund the running of the country, we get criticized from some people for that because they're saying we are encouraging the wrong thing. But if we are having to maintain some semblance of stability to allow us to go forward, we couldn't just crash the economy by adding 2 and 2 equals 4, as some have been encouraging us to do. Some persons have been encouraging us to devalue the dollar because that is the idea of their solution to our problems. Of course, it was one of the options available to us. And as I say to you all the time, running this country is making a series of decisions. And these decisions are always about which option you choose. There's never any one way to do any one thing. So when you hear somebody saying the government didn't do this and the government didn't do that, that sounds good for them. But the government would have looked at all the options and would have chosen the best option for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, if we had devalued the currency, who tells you it would have been better? What guarantee you have that it wouldn't have been far worse? Because devaluation would have meant an increase in the cost of living for everybody, especially those at the lower income level. The cost of everything would have gone up. But they didn't care about that. As far as they're concerned, in the university down there and in the garden and on the radio, 2 + 2 = 4. Case closed. The government doesn't have that option. Our assignment was to try to make you survive the difficult period that we are going through. First and foremost, acknowledge it, then treat with it, but have that faith that a better future is ahead for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Tonight, I want to thank the Minister of Finance, the hard-working Colum Imbert, for the work that he has put out in the last 2 years. You know, some of them, the derision was that, oh, we put our engineer to run the Ministry of Finance, as if that makes any sense, just by saying it. Patrick Manning was Minister of Finance in this country, you know. You know what Patrick Manning's training was? Geology. And they tell you George Chambers was the best Minister of Finance in this country in hindsight, of course, because when he was Minister of Finance, they called him Duncy. But after looking back on what has happened under his tenure and compared to other options, they say George Chambers might have been our best Minister of Finance. What was his background? Understand? So let me tell you, a lot of what passes for the national conversation is good diet for some people. Some of them get a weekly check from the media, in either the papers for the column or the radio station for the foolishness. Don't let that guide you because you don't know where they're taking you. But this government that you have elected, you know where we are taking you. We are taking you across the rapids, across the current, and taking you towards calm waters for prosperity. We have passed the midterm of this government's tenure of its 5 years. We have passed the midterm. And we can tell you tonight that we have accomplished the major assignment that we had when we were sworn in on September 9th, 2015, which is to stabilize this country's economy, deal with the collapse of our revenue, and position us towards growth and future prosperity. That assignment is well underway. To do that, we would have had to spend a lot of time focusing on that skeleton of our country's economy upon which the rest of our limbs rely, the energy sector. Would you believe that even though we are so reliant on energy, that as we sought to fix the problems in the energy sector, we're being criticized by some know-it-alls that we are focusing too much on energy? I'll tell you one thing. The reality is this. If we did not fix the problems in the energy sector, we would have had little chance of avoiding the IMF in Trinidad and Tobago, and no chance of prosperity in the medium term and the long term. Because energy is our God-given legacy of resources which this country can market. And from the revenues from that sector, we have been able to accomplish what we've accomplished as a people and to enjoy the standard of living that we have been accustomed to, and which we demand, and which we claim. You hear the numbers Mr. Ember talking about tonight? Billions of dollars, 15 billion, 23 billion, 400. What other activity can you recommend to us that we can get involved in that will give us that kind of revenue in any short term? Tell me. Old talk is cheap. Stupid talk is available. Serious talk is what the Minister of Finance gave you tonight. So when you elected us to office, we came in and what was steering us in office was stagnation in the energy sector, closure of plants at Point Lisas, and $2 billion in claims from Point Lisas companies against your government for gas not delivered, gas contracted for companies in Point Lisas, and the Point Lisas companies performing at load and capacity down by 20% or 15%, and we didn't know where the gas was coming from. Mr. Ember just told you we were producing 3 billion cubic feet of gas per day. You know how much we require to be comfortable on the current consumption at Point Lisas? 4.2 billion. But we were producing 3. What that meant, every single day, gas was short going to Point Lisas. And we were contracted to provide that gas. And since you weren't providing it, you're not getting the revenue, but you're also getting a charge against your account from people who you contracted to provide it to and who wasn't getting it. So you're getting 2 hits. No revenue from their profits, but you have to pay them for not providing it. As leader of the government, one of the first things I did was to put in place a system which I knew worked, because I was on Patrick Manning's Energy Subcommittee of the Cabinet, where we meet all the people who influence that sector. We meet on a regular basis and focus the cabinet on the issues of that sector. I reconstituted the Energy Committee, and we met on a regular basis and we addressed these issues. As leader of this country, I told you before, you might have heard me saying this before, I am the country's #1 salesman. Because when I speak for this country, I speak as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And I don't go see nobody in my bedroom slippers. I go representing the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I sit across the table where I respect everybody and I demand respect for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the things that we have been able to accomplish is that we have been able to encourage some of the oil companies to withdraw their claims against us for the gas that was not supplied. We have also, in managing the country energy sector, treated with a problem that was not being treated with at all, and that was what price we will put on the gas that is now having to go into the industries that sustain us. The country required a gas price. The 2 largest or the 3 largest suppliers of gas in this country had down tools, folded their arms, watching us and asking us, what is the gas price? What are you going to pay us for our gas? Because except for the gas that Petrotrin produces on Petrotrin's own operation, which is very, very, very small, the bulk of the gas in this country is provided by private sector companies. It is their gas. And when they produce it, they sell it to those who use it through our company, the NGC. We own the NGC. Unfortunately, the NGC had $16 billion in cash when the UNC came in. They make sure they take out every cent. You know, I went to London recently, and I sat with Shell and BP, me and my team, and Shell and them on the team. My position to these companies on your behalf is that we are happy that they're doing well in Trinidad and Tobago because we need them here, we need their investment here. But as fast as they are reporting improved profits and performance for their shareholders, My position to them as the leader of Trinidad and Tobago on your behalf is that I have shareholders too. And my shareholders are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So in the meeting in London, I was pleased to hear and to receive from one of these companies that the royalty that we have levied in the last appropriation bill, the last budget, that for the next 3 years, they will pay the royalty of $260 million US, but will not pass it on to the NGC. You know what that means? It means that that money is now going to be available to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But when we said that we were going to impose a royalty on this wasting resource, the know-it-alls and the pontificators jump out, either from the opposition party or from the radio station where they pay the $25 a week or whatever it is, telling you that because we have done that, we are reckless. Madam Kamala, who bankrupt this country, that we are reckless by imposing this tax, that foreign investors would now leave. They'll pick up the plants and leave the country, and investors wouldn't invest in this country because royalty is being charged on the gas at the wellhead. You think they're happy to hear that the royalty will be paid and paid to the NGC and not passed on as a tax to the NGC? Understand? We had no gas price settlement. Notwithstanding the fact that they've been priding themselves as being the best minister of energy and the best government and the best this, self-praise. That is what you were getting by the gallon from them. But your business was going to hell in a handbasket. During our term, our first year, into our second year, the NGC, your company, was negotiating under the guidance of the government, negotiating with these companies for the gas price. They came that close, and for months, they couldn't close the gap. So we had no gas price, nothing happening. As your leader, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I sat across the table with Minister Young, with these companies, Shell, BP, and EOG. And we brought the two companies together, and they closed the deal, and we have a gas price. Immediately, $10 billion of investment was committed, and that's US dollars, was committed for investment in the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago. It is that commitment over the next period of 5 years that is now driving the exploration in our deep water off the East Coast, guaranteeing us not only a supply of gas to keep us going as a gas user and a gas product exporter in this country, but guaranteeing us a supply of gas at the level at which we want, which is upwards of 4 billion cubic feet a day, not just to treat today's needs, but guaranteeing us that into the future. And our future has to be a long, deep one, because we, those of us who have both feet in this country, and those of us who want this country to have a long and prosperous future, we don't count in terms of this week or next week or this generation. We look well beyond the generations to come. And that is why, notwithstanding whatever difficulty is going on in Venezuela, there's a government in Venezuela, and your government went to Venezuela, and at the level of Prime Minister and government of Trinidad and Tobago, meeting with the government of Venezuela, we started to work on this whole question of having Trinidad and Tobago being a gateway for gas from eastern Venezuela into our pipes, into our pipeline down to Point Lisas to give us a future, not next week or next month, but for the years ahead. We are one decision away from that matter being closed. I think in the next week, Minister Young goes to Panama to meet with Minister Young and Shell and PDVSA. The Minister of Energy of Venezuela and our Minister and Shell, which is partnering us in this arrangement, and we should have a closure to that. And we have an agreement where Venezuelan gas from eastern Venezuela would find its way to market through Trinidad and Tobago. We did that, not because we didn't have gas here, but because we are looking at the future, the long term for Trinidad and Tobago. That is what a government does. That's what a government ought to do. So we've settled the energy sector. We've settled the manufacturing sector in Point Lisas. So having put the skeleton in good position, we turned elsewhere. You always hear about diversification, diversification. It's an annoying word because some people are still making $25 a week at the newspaper writing columns about diversification. Annoying. When you ask them, diversify into what? They can't tell you. What would you do to diversify the economy, especially if you abandon the energy sector? They can't tell you. But they're on television, they're on radio, they're in the newspaper, diversification. But let me tell you what our diversification is. Our diversification is to find the things that we can do and just do them. We talked a lot. I was minister under Prime Minister Patrick Manning. I was Minister of Planning and Development. I was responsible for putting Vision 2020 in place. My successor, Minister Camille Robinson-Regis, she concluded it, but it was started under me. And in the years 2001 to 2004, I think it was, that assignment was part of my portfolio. So I am privileged to have an insight into what the country can and cannot do, and how big certain aspects of our economy can be or cannot be. So now that I'm Prime Minister, I can more confidently drive my ministers on some of the things that I know something about. When you have a Prime Minister who knows nothing about nothing, they could talk everything about everything and get nothing done. So I know that one of the areas that we can do something is in the tourism sector. And that is why early in the game, when I was opposition leader, I spoke to the owners of sandals and asked them to look at Tobago and see if Tobago can attract a sandals project which could give us all the spin-off from that world-renowned, all-inclusive tourism product. People in the opposition are asking me what process I use to procure them and whatever. I'm not answering them stupid questions. We have nothing to hide. Everything that we do on the table, who know otherwise, let them say so. I make $1.5 million already from people telling lies about me and slandering me. I want to make some more. Right? So, if we go into tourism, we have to do it in a way that it can make a significant contribution to the economy. If you don't believe me, ask the Prime Minister of Grenada what 167 rooms at Sandals have done for the economy of Grenada. Don't take our word for it. We are talking about a Sandals and a Beaches Hotel in Tobago together of 800 rooms. But we're not giving Sandals anything. We're using the same model that gave us the Hilton and the Hyatt. They are government-owned. All of you here know the government own the Hilton. We as PNM get no credit for that. Understand? Under Eric Williams, we built the Hilton, and Hilton been run by a management contract using the Hilton label, the famous upside-down hotel. Later on, under Patrick Manning, the Hyatt came into being. We own the Hyatt on the Hyatt label. So if we have that successful model, what I'm saying to you, the Sandals in Tobago, the government builds it, and we have a Sandals label on it, and we have a tourism product in Tobago, and we try to fill the rooms and put the economy in Tobago on its 2 feet. What is all this questioning about where you're going to give them and where you're going to get and where you're going to do, and coming from the pontificators who don't know the front from the elbow, and those are the people who are trying to harass you when the day comes. In your difficult circumstance, we are trying to lead you into the light, them turning off your bulb. Right? Anything we give to the Sandals project in Tobago, we give to ourselves because it is our hotel. But to put it in place, it will cost a few $100 million. And if the government could avoid spending any and all of that, better still. So the first thing we did, we offered shareholding in the project to the biggest local companies in Trinidad and Tobago. Two of them said, yes, we will consider coming in for taking a piece of the equity. One said we're not interested at all. Because there are some people in Trinidad and Tobago, all they're interested in is finding as much of the subsidized US dollars that the government put in the banks, hoard it, and demand a devaluation. And the Minister of Finance devalue the currency, and they make hundreds of millions of dollars by the Minister of Finance just saying so. Well, that may be good for them, but it's not good for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we're starting out with the government going to build and own that hotel. And to the extent that we find partners with equity, we will reduce the government's exposure. But if they don't come, the government will have to go it alone on your behalf, and they usually come after. Last week, a few months ago, we met with a local investor who was claiming he had some money. And he wanted to give us advice as to how to run the country. And the way to run the country is to give him the Hyatt Hotel. You understand? Anyway, but that's another story. So we are going in a big way in tourism. But of course, it's not a single action. You would have heard us saying that we're looking at increasing CAL's involvement in international travel. On my trip to China recently, I took the chairman of Caribbean Airlines. And the purpose for doing that is because we are looking at the Chinese market as one of the areas that could drive growth in the tourism sector in Trinidad and Tobago and the region. As I speak to you now, as a result of that visit to China, CAL is already connected to one of the best airlines in China. We have 12 planes. We own an airline, Caribbean Airline, costing us an arm and a leg. This airline we're talking about has 1,200 planes. We have 12. They have 1,200. I don't know how many of you put our situation in the perspective of history. There was a time in this country when there was nothing going on except manual labor. And industry was people in the pitch lake carrying buckets on their head with pitch that they took out with a pickaxe. That was the beginning of it. And then later on, the oil industry grew with British investment, British Petroleum and U-Boat and so on. We don't know our history, We don't like play a part in our development, but we need to. Foreign investment came to this country when we were a British colony, came from Britain, and later on from the United States. And all along, we've had this foreign investment inflow. Today, under today's world circumstances, other than the energy sector where US investment is very large and very important to us, what is the foreign investment we can look to the US for, and in what area? And there are far more areas competing for it than when it was 30 or 40 years ago. But today, China is the world's second largest economy. So while the economy of Britain drove us for a while, and the economy of the United States drove us for another period of time, if we are to tap into serious inflows of foreign investment, we have to look to economies that have investment and looking to invest it abroad, and China is where that is today. So we've gone to China. We met with the Chinese at the very highest level, and we are in serious discussion with them, and we told them straight, we are not simply interested in Chinese companies coming here and getting funded for a contract to build something and get paid as a contractor and leave the country after. We are interested in you coming here and investing in our future, because you have something that we want, and you have something that we want. We need your investment, and you need us on our location and our resources in the Caribbean. And we're not just talking about Tobago there. Because if Caribbean Airline links up with a good Chinese airline, and we become the hub in the Southern Caribbean for international travel to the largest market for tourists now, because China is now producing more tourists on the world market than any other country. 120 million Chinese traveled last year. If a fraction of that comes down to the Southern Caribbean through Trinidad and Tobago, that will drive our economy in some distance. And more importantly, if they invest in our country to allow us to maximize our location in the Caribbean, particularly through the airline that we own, then we'll be using our resources to create a future which will be bright for us, which we now do not have. And that was the reason for my visit to China. One of the reasons, next week, a group of Chinese businessmen come to Trinidad and Tobago. Because another thing we are doing is to try to tap into the Chinese strength in manufacturing and export of manufactured products. And that is why we are building in Phoenix Park an industrial estate which will initially be populated by 10 large Chinese manufacturing companies to create jobs in Trinidad and Tobago and to create products for export. Of course, I know there are people who will tell us that we can export tomato, bygone, cucumber, lettuce, and so on. Fine, nothing wrong with that. But of course, the scale at which that will earn money for us, important as it may be, is still minuscule. We are talking about looking for the kind of investment that could give us the kind of effect that will significantly contribute to a broadening of our economy. You would have heard us talking about the maritime sector as an area of growth. You heard it when the Manning government identified in our program, Vision 2020, that they threw in the labas. 5 years, they're in office, they produced nothing, did nothing. But I can tell you, we are on the verge now of trying to move from talk to action. I received in China a presentation of work that we have done for the last year in La Brea, where what we're talking about is trying to create in Trinidad and Tobago a ship servicing business to service large ocean-going vessels. And the reason why we target that business in China is because that is what they're good at. And when you look at the world map of the business where they are all over the world, the one place where there's a gap where that business doesn't exist is in this region of Central South America and the Caribbean. And we've said to the Chinese, we want to partner with you to establish that kind of facility in Trinidad and Tobago, but we want you to have skin in the game. We want you to have equity in it. We don't want you to build anything for us and then walk away and leave us with it. And when we can't pay for it, you say, well, give it to me for the debt you owe me. But if you are an equity partner, you handle 200 ships a year. I'm talking about huge ocean-going vessels, cargo vessels in particular, Panamax vessels. If we get some of those vessels in Trinidad and Tobago, it comes in an area where we have expertise, we have skills. And on my trip to China, I went to one of these companies that is interested in Trinidad and Tobago in this discussion to see exactly what they do. And it is the kind of business that the people of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly those people who have grown up in and around the energy sector, it's welding, it's painting, it's handling of machines, and so on and so on. And they have made a proposal to us for a business in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are well advanced in those discussions. And I hope that it comes to fruition because we're not just talking, we are talking about partnering with those who are involved in that business. And if we do that and have that kind of business in Trinidad and Tobago, it will have a large and positive impact on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly in South Trinidad. So these are the kinds of things that we are doing, and you'll see and hear more of them in the weeks and months ahead. When I met with the president and the premier of China, we had these discussions because you know a lot of these Chinese companies, because of the nature of the Chinese system, these companies are government owned. Most of them. The airline I spoke about that CAL is aiming to partner with is private sector from one part of China. But the bulk of the companies are government owned. And in the discussion with the premier and president of China, they understood And more importantly, they acknowledge Trinidad and Tobago's partnership with China since China became a member of the United Nations. We are very highly regarded and very highly respected in China, and we are to leverage that for our benefit at this point in our history. That is what this government is doing. And the heads of the Chinese government indicated to us that they accept our position of not simply providing opportunities for Chinese contractors, but that we need that equity investment, that foreign investment. And they've indicated that they're happy to have their companies participate in enterprises which are commercially sound. And that is why I went to China, to get that position for companies that can invest, that have the wherewithal to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. Some of the largest banks in the world today are Chinese banks. And if you're looking for foreign investment and partnership, you fish where the fish is. Ladies and gentlemen, as we do that, you know, things don't always go the way you plan them. Just as we are beginning to see the light, as Mr. Imbert has just mentioned, and just as our work for the last year and a half is beginning to put us in a position for that next leap into expanding our economy, guess what happens? Barbados announced that they're in big trouble. Barbados is on its way to the IMF. And for those of you who don't understand, Barbados is not alone in that matter. We are there with them. Because Barbados' success is our success, and Barbados' pain is our pain. For those of you who have been following the news from Barbados, you would have heard in the very first week of the new government, the government has announced they're going to the IMF and they're going to restructure the economy. We have to wait now and see what are the conditionalities of that restructuring. But the government has already announced what is in effect a default in handling their debt and in handling commercial arrangements in Barbados. Before you understand the full extent of this for you here in Trinidad and Tobago, you have to wait for the government to tell you, because the others will not tell you the exposure of Trinidad and Tobago's businesses to the conditions that will apply in Barbados. And it will have serious consequences for us, depending on how serious it is over there. Because just as Minister Imbert was telling us that we are receiving more taxes from the non-oil sector, it might very well be that some of our non-oil sector people might be exposed in Barbados in one way or the other and may not be in a position to improve or increase their profitability going forward. And the corollary might be some of them might, in fact, see some significant retraction. So just as we are thinking that we are getting the benefit of increased non-oil taxes, it might very well be that we have exposure there. I don't want to talk too much about it now because we have to examine it to see exactly what our exposure is, because our economies are in fact intertwined. You see, the level of the national conversation in Trinidad and Tobago is extremely poor. Because anybody could buy a hammer and call yourself carpenter, anybody buy a trowel and is a mason, anybody go in front of a microphone and you're a commentator in Trinidad and Tobago. You have to have no facts. You have to have no knowledge of anything. As a matter of fact, many of them now start out with the, I don't know, you know, but. As they I don't know, but, watch it. They're coming to pontificate, and it's all negative. It's bad enough that you have to look at the future of a gathering storm coming at you, and all the pouring inside your ears hole is negative. Who encourages you to get up and stand up and to flex your muscle and walk out into the storm, because the storm is not going to last all your life? Who encourages you to do that? The People's National Movement. And that is why these two young ladies tonight, Ms. Kimberly Small, who will represent us here in the Barataria local government seat, and Miss Young from Belmont, two of our standard bearers, when they wear this red, when they come as our candidates, stand, let them see you, our young people. This is the latest generation of the PNM carrying our standard as it was carried in 56, as it was carried in 66, as it was carried in 76, as it was carried in 2015. Our young people, whether it is Isabel Tisha or Carmen Robinson Regis, tonight we have the next generation. And of course, there's no political party that has opened the way for women in this country that more than the People's National Movement. We are doing what has to be done for this country at this juncture, and all of it is not painless. And it is because I recognize that as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, that I don't lose 1 minute's sleep over the outcome of the next general election. Because we are prepared to do what has to be done, confident that if we do what has to be done with the integrity, the honesty, and the God-given talent that we have available in this party and in this country, we are confident that the future of Trinidad and Tobago is bright and will be on our way to prosperity. Tomorrow morning, I go down to South Trinidad to open a section of the highway that we're building to Point 14. Monies that we have recovered from attempts to steal it. The project is going on. We had to, Minister Young, he's somewhere in the corner over there, had to lead the government charge in capitals abroad to get back $1 billion from the largest contract that we have ever had in this country. When election week, Rambachan as minister oversaw his ministry taking out from the contract the clause that said that a contractor who goes bankrupt could be fired by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. They take out the clause to protect the contractor. We had to go to court, and we fought them, and we won. But they're still fighting in arbitration, but the court has ordered us that we could spend the money in the meantime. We're spending the $900 million on the road to Point 14. Tomorrow morning I go to open a piece of the work that has been completed under our stewardship and to award more contracts. Because we understand that half of the country's prosperity would not be the whole country's prosperity. And developing half of the country and leaving the other half behind is simply hamstringing ourselves for not getting the full potential of our nation. And that is why 3 areas in this country are falling to focus under this government to bring those areas into the national economy to contribute as fully as the rest of the economy. The Southwestern Peninsula, where La Brea is the center today of poverty. You mark my word that very soon La Brea would be the center of prosperity in industry in Trinidad and Tobago. Eastern Trinidad, from Arima all the way to Tobago, the statistics will show, is the poorest area of Trinidad and Tobago. And to deal with that, you have to build the infrastructure to bring these people into the economy and to bring the economy to them. And you do so by building them the infrastructure that the rest of the country has. The highway from Valencia to Toco and to Manzanilla and on the way to Toco is the only highway in this country ever built where every single approval, right down to local government approval, has been had. And of course, with the court fighting, because there are people in this country whose approach to trying to get their control is to try and obstruct and stop every God in heaven thing that this country tries to do for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So we lost the whole dry season. The entire dry season is lost now because anytime now the rains can break. And the people of Valencia, Sangre Grande, Cumana, Rampanalgas, Toco and Tobago would have been denied the access that we were building for them going that way. I don't know if you all recall, when we were building the highway out of Port of Spain, we built the first piece up to Barataria, up to here, flyover up to here. The next piece up to Curep, then we built it in sections. To San Fernando, we built it piece by piece, but now we have a highway going all the way to San Fernando. That's how we're building it going east, so that the people of the east can benefit from that infrastructure. There are some people in this country who don't want that. Understand? They don't want that. But let me tell you something. There's a piece of land in Glencoe. You know Glencoe? Up in Glencoe, there's a piece of land under forest. If you see monkey, snake, butterfly, goatee, anything, laptop, it's for sale. Anybody here want to buy it? It's for sale for development, for the forest to be bulldozed, to crowd up the road in Glencoe, to create flooding in Glencoe, to disrupt the habitat of the monkey and the lap and the goatee and the tattoo. But the same owners of that land who have it for sale for millions of dollars to put in their pocket, running up to Toco to tell people in Toco, don't let the government build no road because monkey passed in there and goatee passed there last night. So when it is time to develop the infrastructure for the wider national community, they have issues of infrastructure, they have issues of environment. But when it's time to destroy upper reaches of Glencoe, not interested in that. You understand what we're dealing with? You understand? So the third area is Tobago. For too long, and thankfully, Tobago is still pristine and for too long left out of the national economy. We are expanding our national economy in Tobago. We're building a new terminal building on the airport. We're building a marina in Tobago. And we're building the project I mentioned earlier on, the expansion with the Sandals brand in Tobago. Those three items will give us a significant jump in the tourism area and bring the Tobago economy center stage in Trinidad and Tobago, where Tobago can contribute far more than it's contributing now for all the people of Tobago and for Trinidad and Tobago. Those are the kinds of things that your government is engaged in. Only today, the cabinet approved a number of millions of dollars to complete the E-Tech Industrial Park in Wallerfield so that we could, the dream that was stopped and killed by the said Stephen Cadiz. You heard his name called it tonight? So while he was shutting down the E-Tech Park, leaving it there to gather dust and moss, because they have no vision for the future of this or the other generation, they was preparing their own family pocket well lined and well secured. So on the back of Keith Noel 136, when he was counting dead people, murdered people, when he left the government, he made sure he fixed his family with a contract to maintain vessels, millions and millions of dollars, just by being the middleman to maintain. And of course, to maintain on their terms. Ladies and gentlemen of Trinidad and Tobago, it depends on who you are listening to in this country that you will determine the nature of the education of your own situation and understand who is on your side. How many times did you hear from the UNC government that they fixed the Clico matter? Whether it was Dukaran or Larry Hawaii. Remember them? We have fixed the Clico matter once and for all. But when they were owing us $15 billion of your money, unsecured and with no interest being accrued, and telling the government, get off the board, and we are not signing the agreement, an agreement that they extended 16 times, and had to be extended for the 17th time. I am Prime Minister, Imbut is Minister of Finance. Well, Imbut short, he's low fence, they could jump over. Or so they thought. So they thought. You owe the government $15 billion on which you're paying no interest. You got your government friends before to tell the country that you fix it and all fix. Spend 5 years in office. They wouldn't collect a cent of the money is owed to the people. But whether we wanted to or not, we had to, because as Mark Senthouse say, we need the money. And while that is so, you have the gall, with the encouragement of one of the pontificators on radio on Friday morning, to come and tell the country that the government must get off the board, give up the chairmanship and get off the board. I sent Mr. Hines to talk to them. Don't try me. Don't test the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and worse, this is the PNM. When we went to court that weekend, when they organized the AGM, remember they organized AGM to throw the government off the board? Because what they decided, since we did not agree to get off the board, when Dupré came back for the company, they decided to add directors to the board, to put the government in the minority and take back the company. We had to go to court. They thought we were incompetent, they thought we were stupid. What they didn't realize, that all along while they was carrying on with the parading on radio and elsewhere, we were talking to the best lawyers in London. And we had the best advice available. And when they made their move to put the government off the board and to huff the $15 million under their control, we went to court and asked the court to give us a liquidator. When we did that weekend, that whole weekend, it boiled right down to race. Right down to race, it boiled down to, it was Cyril Dupré company, the black man company, and the la 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 la. You remember that story? And of course, when they won the first round in the court, where the judge said it must be heard, man, they crow like a rooster. And the next time in the court, in 15 minutes, we won the case, and the company was liquidated, and the assets are now under the control of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and you're going to get back your $15 million. And if that is what they call incompetence, we will be incompetent Monday to Friday and on to the next Monday. Because we act in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You see, we've done that. We've got your money now secured because we have the assets under our control. And the Minister of Finance will have told you tonight how we intend to proceed. I want to say one thing to you here, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, tonight. I'm giving you a piece of advice that Hugh Eastman, a good friend of mine who passed away recently, told me when I was a young man. I was about in my early 20s. And he said to me, regardless of what you are working for, you must be able to save something from it. Especially if you look towards having a family and your family having a future. He said, the example he gave me then is if you were working for $10 and you figure you can't make ends meet and you're suffering and you're oppressed, you're living. Suppose your salary was $9 and you would still be living. So from the $10, if you save one and you live on the 9, you're ahead of the game. And that is how I've lived my life ever since. As we make these assets available to you through those bonds, I'm appealing to the people, especially the little people of Trinidad and Tobago. Don't be encouraged into believing that you have no place in this. Let me remind you of what used to happen when the UTC was being formed. There were people in this country who were opposed to the unit trust. And they were opposed to the PNM government forming a unit trust. Because they knew it was going to fail, and it was going to this, and it was going to that. Today there is hardly a family or an owner in this country who does not have an account at the unit trust. So as we put the National Investment Fund available out there to you, make the sacrifice, make the investment, and own a piece of it. Organize your life as an investor of some sort. Don't consume everything that you own. She said the future. I will say your children's future. Because it is how the next generation does that will determine how successful this generation is. So when this opportunity comes to you, an opportunity many of them didn't think would ever come to you, but as long as there's a people's national movement with a record like our record, you will always have a future and prosperity will always be your portion. You see, this issue of race, it is the one issue that can derail us and ensure that we do not realize our fullest potential. Tonight, I want to caution the influence makers in Trinidad and Tobago to stop trying to use race to advance their personal or their political agenda. One of the successes of this country is that as a multi-ethnic, multiracial society, we have lived together in harmony, and let us continue so to do. Last carnival, as a matter of fact, before carnival, we have had to answer questions in the parliament about what we are doing, about our citizens who are leaning towards terrorism abroad and whatever. That's that story. Because some of our people that gone abroad and become poster boys for the Iraqi terrorists and ISIS and so on. And we, the government, have to answer in the parliament to the opposition who are doing that job. They ask us questions, and I think on 2 or 3 occasions we had to answer them as to, and the main answer we were giving them is that we were monitoring those who were so inclined to be sympathetic to that situation. It's a world situation. Virtually everywhere in the world was facing it, and still facing it. We told the parliament we were monitoring. Coming up towards carnival, some of the people that we were monitoring came on the radar big time to us from abroad, because we are cooperating with some of the bigger countries who have more resources abroad, and they would assist us with information that is valuable to us. And you would know at carnival time we told you what we had to do and so on. One of the things we did, we raided, the security services raided a couple of mosques. When that was done, there were those who took it upon themselves to go and be telling this country that the government is anti-Muslim, the government is anti-this, and telling the international community how the government capriciously was doing this and that to places of worship and so on. You remember that story? Today, one of the very mosques that we had to raid at carnival time, on credible information that the security services had, we have found within that place of worship lethal weapons, arms, and ammunition in a place of worship. I want to ask you tonight, given what we found today in a place of worship, what do you say to and think about those persons who at carnival time carried a conversation in this country that the government of Trinidad and Tobago was anti-Muslim and was in fact desecrating Muslim places of worship? What are they saying to us now? They're saying to us that if you know that there are arms and ammunition, and you get credible information that arms and ammunition are finding their way into places of worship, whether it's Baptist or Risha, Hindu or Muslim, the police mustn't act. That's what they're saying to us. Because if the police acts, these loudmouths who are advancing their own personal agendas will stir up racial and religious strife in this country. Tonight, I want to say to the Muslim community, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, especially the leaders in the Muslim community, none of us have anything to gain by encouraging that kind of development in our country. And it is important that we tell our people, especially our young people who may be wanting to go down that road, that there's nothing but sadness and sorrow at the end of that pathway. And as we continue to subscribe to the words, letter, and spirit of our national anthem, where every creed and race finds an equal place, let us all defend that equality in that equal place. Today, after the UNC walked out the parliament last night because they didn't get their commissioner. I didn't know they had a commissioner. I didn't know they had a commissioner. Rambachan sleep whole night last night in the debate. Somebody tell the one next to him, hunch him before he snore. As he opened his eyes, he wasn't concerned about where the debate was, what the logic was in the debate, and so on. It just flowed out of his mouth. It just flowed out of his mouth that they don't want an Indian commissioner. I wasn't there when it happened, but I'm being told that when Minister Dale Singh was talking, he shouted that comment across the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, during World War II, there was a slogan that was used by the Allies. Loose lips sink ships. Stupid talk by Rambachan and UNC mouthpieces could destroy nations. Because they walked out the parliament last night because they want to go home. They want to go and drink by the Hyatt, so they left. They left the people's business in the parliament and traipsed down to the Hyatt to drink. You know, you don't have a thing with drinking, right? Right. So they left and went to drink. After contriving to walk out of the parliament, I expected today that they would do the usual, which is to conduct some kind of press conference and to misrepresent the facts, to say how the speaker chased about the parliament and so on. They didn't do that. They did one better. The singular statement that came out of the UNC today came out of the mouth of somebody called Anita Haynes. Anita Haynes, who is the PRO of the United National Congress, a party that just came out of 5 years of government, a party that is in opposition, that aspires to be the next government, if you're crazy. But hear the statement today. The official statement from the UNC today is that we, the PNM, the government, contrived last night to remove the Indian nominee and didn't do anything about the African nominee in the parliament. So Dulal Chan was blocked, but Philip was not. That is the official statement from the UNC today. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you all, and I'm speaking here to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, against this official position of the UNC, let me as leader of the government tell you what the facts are. The President of the Republic, following the Constitution and a process that took place to look for a commissioner, where those who were doing the looking through the Public Service, the Police Service Commission, sent the names to the President of two people, Dulal Chan for commissioner, Philip for deputy commissioner. And the President, under the Constitution, had to send that to the Parliament for the Parliament to say yea or nay. When it came to the Parliament, the matter was sent to a joint select committee because there was a special select committee of the Parliament to determine what was the problem that was going on with respect to the dissatisfaction of those who were applicants in the process. Because serious allegations were being made, serious discontent was going on, and that was the subject of the day. It went to the select committee chaired by Mr. Hines, and I want to congratulate Mr. Hines for the work he did. That committee was to assist the Parliament with information so as to be able to either accept or reject what the process sent to us by way of the President. Last night, as leader of the government, after the debate, we were able to take a position that the government could not support the notification sent to us. And therefore, the notification, whether it was to make Dulal Chan commissioner or to make Philip deputy commissioner, we said that the process is flawed. And from that flawed process, nobody could be appointed. Now, that affects Mr. Dulal Chan in a particular way. He cannot be commissioner. It also affects Mr. Philip. He cannot be deputy. But Mr. Philip is deputy even without the process. Philip is already the deputy. So why is the UNC now going to lie to the country to create racial strife, to say that we took an action that was selective against Dulal Chan and to favor Philip, when in fact the outcome of that parliamentary debate and the whole process is that the whole matter goes back to the Police Service Commission for the commission to deal with, and the commission does not take instructions from the government. It's an independent commission. You see the level of wickedness that goes on in Trinidad and Tobago, where they're always playing the race card. Last week I was abroad. I saw a very highly qualified young person in Trinidad and Tobago, professional person, at a function in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm reading this thing abroad and my eyes are burning me. The entire presentation of this person, probably politically driven or otherwise, is about racial discrimination against Indian people in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, where is that happening in Trinidad and Tobago? So they are prepared to pay fast and loose. The UNC is the official opposition in this country. And that is the statement they make today. And of course, they never want anybody else to mention the word race. Last night, as soon as I started my presentation, and I took history with Rambachan, they jump up, all of them jump up, to accuse me of race, because I am responding to their racial statements. Well, I'll respond to it every day of the week, because I am not afraid to speak about race in this country, because we all have our racial origin and we all are in danger of those who would use race to destroy Trinidad and Tobago. They don't want us to speak about it, but they want to use it to drive their politics. What I will tell you, as I told you a little while ago, we in this government that you have elected, we have a period of months still in office. We will do what we have to do for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And whenever the election is called, you, the people, will have to determine whether we continue or whether somebody else runs this country. That is your right, that is your opportunity. And I will say to you, all we will be doing in that general election to come is to tell you what we have done for and on your behalf during the 5 years that we were in government. And we do so without fear. Without fear. Ladies and gentlemen, this PNM is the glue that holds this country together. This PNM is the fabric that gives us that future, that oneness, that strength as a people. And that is why I am confident that come July the 16th, in Barataria and Belmont, the people in these communities will have no difficulty to but come out and join the PNM and vote for PNM candidates to maintain that stability, that progress, and that prosperity that we have. While them talking, we working. And we're working for you. I'm proud of the team that I lead. Many of them are young and in government for the first time. But they are learning, they have learned, and they're getting stronger every day. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.